Have you ever sat down at your desk, opened your laptop, and felt like you had absolutely nothing left to give? Do you find yourself staring at the screen, exhausted because you've been running on empty for far too long? Hey, co-authors. In this episode, we're going to talk about writer's block, what it looks like, why it happens, and how to restore the energy you need to keep moving forward. We'll explore how a lack of clarity may be killing your writing momentum and practical strategies for recharging your creativity when it feels completely drained. So let's dive in. Whenever I was first starting out as a writing coach, I had a client who was working on her dissertation. She reached out to me. She was like, I haven't really made a whole lot of progress on this. I have a whole bunch of ideas. I keep talking to my advisor. It doesn't seem like it's moving anywhere though. Can you help me? So I look at her materials. We talk through what a timeline looks like to get her back on track. And she's like, okay, I feel good about this. I understand what the assignment is. I understand what my timeline is. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to get back together and I'll have something for you. Great. 2 weeks go by. We meet again. She's like, oh, well, I didn't really understand this part. And that was really kind of giving me some problems. And so I really haven't written anything. I'm like, okay, well, no static. So let's address that. So talk about the issue a little bit. All right, are we good now? Do we feel good? We feel great. Okay, great. Awesome. So in 2 weeks, I want to see your next draft. Okay, 2 weeks go by. Comes back. Well, I kind of got into this reading and I started to do this, and that kind of made me think about this different idea and if that would even work with what I was trying to do. And, whenever we talked, you said this. And so whenever I read this other thing, well, that didn't seem right to me. And so, I haven't gotten any writing done. Okay. Now all of a sudden I understand what's going on here. We're talking to each other. I ask you questions. I try to work you through this process. You tell me that you understand, and then you go back and maybe it's a day or a few days or even a week before you actually sit down and try to write something. Well, by that time, what I've told you, what you remember, and what you're trying to do, all those things are getting jumbled now. And so you just get faced with this insurmountable writer's block. It seems like every time that you talk to me, or I'm sure earlier, whenever you were talking to your advisor, you would have these exact same conversations. You talk to them, you would feel confident, you'd feel like everything is good. Then you'd sit down at your keyboard a few days or a few weeks later and nothing would come out. And you would try to remember that sense of confidence and determination that you had, and it just didn't seem like it was there for you anymore. Maybe something like this has happened to you. You feel like you've got a good handle on this project or idea or grant. Maybe it's because you've talked with an advisor. Maybe you've talked with your other co-authors. Maybe it's just you felt like you have a good command of the literature and you sit down and you're like, okay, now it's time for me to actually start writing. And it seems like none of the pieces really fit on the page in the way that they did in your head, maybe even 30 seconds before you sat down to write all this out. And so that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about writer's block, and I want to talk about how we can manage those feelings. That way we can get words on the page and we can start being productive. So let's dive in. Are you interested in mastering scholarly writing, developing productivity, and increasing impact, all while staying healthy? Then welcome to the Publishing Academic Research Podcast. Hi, my name is Dr. Kyle Reddick, and I'm a full professor at the University of Northern Iowa. I've written dozens of articles, books, chapters, and essays, as well as edited some of the top journals in my discipline. I meet so many scholars who have creative, innovative, and daring ideas, but can never seem to get those projects from proposals to print. I want you to get your work in the hands of people who will read it and appreciate it. So let's get into this week's big idea. Before I get into the issues with writer's block, I do want to reemphasize that this is a completely common thing. In my experience, writer's block typically tends to be the number one enemy of theses and dissertations in particular. I think that the combination of perfectionism, having repeated feedback from a professor, and also just the short time frame and the knowledge that you have to get this done on this timeline so that way you can graduate and go on to the next thing. All those things pose a pretty unique threat to our mental self-image of ourselves as competent and as smart people. So when faced with that situation over the course of months, maybe even years, you just start to shut down and the passion that you have for that project really starts to slip away. But even if you're a professor working on your own research or a grant or whatever, you can still be afflicted with writer's block. That might come because of the pressures to establish yourself as a scholar, the need to show others that you are worthy of being a part of this conversation, that you're contributing to the scholarly literature, or even that you're just publishing enough to get a job or get your promotion or get tenure or whatever it might be. All that pressure on top of just the intellectual labor working through all of this stuff can really put you in this place where it just feels like you have this sort of mental barrier between where you are and where you want to go. For me, sometimes it even feels like I've got this like glass wall where I can see just on the other side, oh, there's good ideas, there's the words that I want over there, there's the things that I want over on that side. And there's just like this low grade headache that just is stopping me from getting over to that other side. And so whenever it's at its worst, all I can do is just sit there and like fruitlessly and continuously bash my mental head against this invisible wall. So whenever I work with folks, I typically find there are 3 root causes of writer's block. And I want to go over those so that way whenever we talk about the strategies for success, we know which strategies are best for whatever you're dealing with. The first problem that I typically encounter with clients and students and colleagues whenever it comes to writer's block is just lack of clarity. Sometimes this comes just from inexperience in writing. At this point, whenever I want to conduct research, I pretty much know the direction that I'm going to take throughout the entire project. I might be interested in a particular dynamic. I can think of that dynamic in the terms of whatever theories or frameworks I think might best suit addressing that dynamic. And from that, I might have even some general ideas about what I might end up finding through my research. That comes from experience. That comes from doing over a decade of research. After a while, you become so used to all of the literature that you are reading and rereading about your area that you kind of have a pretty clear sense of what your research trajectory is going to start looking like. But if you are a novice writer or an inexperienced writer, or you don't write very often, and you're not continuously and over long periods of time steeped in a body of literature, then that lack of clarity starts to creep in and it starts to tug at you in your writing process. You read something and you're like, oh, this is the idea that I want to go with. And you read 2 or 3 other things. And you're like, oh, well, that's pretty cool too. And so that kind of makes its way into your literature review. And then you write maybe a couple of paragraphs and you're like, well, I had this idea, but literature that I was reading wasn't really helping me address that. So let me do some more reading. And so you read a little bit more and you're like, okay, that's the thing that's going to help me. So you write then another paragraph or 2. And then you're like, okay, now I'm stuck again. And then you turn that in to an advisor or to an editor or to a reviewer or someone, and they look at that and they're like, oh, this just looks like a hot mess because you've just been bouncing from all of these different bodies of literature and with no really clear, coherent thought about how they're all supposed to connect. They connect to you because you're in the thick of it, but it's not really connecting for an outsider. So this lack of clarity can come because you might have, maybe a not great, I don't want to say bad, but a not great advisor where you might have gotten not great advice from reviewers or an editor or whoever it might be. And this not great feedback that you're getting is itself contradictory. Or maybe, you turned in a draft of your chapter of a dissertation to your advisor and they're like, do X, Y, and Z, and you did those things, and then you hand it to them again next time, they're like, oh, well, why did you do X? You should have done this completely different thing. And that can instill all sorts of lack of clarity there. That process can really start to wear you down because it feels like after a while that you're writing in a space of trying to please who your reader is. And that reader is not an amorphous blob of people, nor is it even really a more concrete, but still kind of general like audience to a journal. It might be this reviewer, this editor, this advisor right here gives me contradictory feedback. And that can really give you a sense of writer's block because it seems like the avenues of thought that you have, all of them end up being dead ends for you. I would say the next 2 things usually come as a result of the first one, which is to say the second one is that you get depleted energy or just absolute burnout. So after a while, this lack of clarity starts to manifest itself as you chasing your own tail all the time, right? You're reading all of this stuff. You're flitting from literature to literature in this vain attempt to figure out what it is that they want. And on some level, you think to yourself, they know what the answer is. They know what it is that they want, and they're hiding the answer behind their back from me and getting some perverse pleasure out of making me guess. And if they would just tell me what it is they want me to write, I would write that thing and we could move on, but they won't tell me. And now I'm getting frustrated and I'm getting angry, and all of this makes it incredibly difficult for me to now write. And I will say, academia is like anywhere else. There are people who are jerks. There are academics who are jerks. And so it is absolutely possible that your advisor or reviewers or an editor is in fact a jerk and that they're not helping you the way that they should. But for the most part, most folks are here to help you. That is the ethic that they have moving forward with you. And so whenever they say, I don't know what it is that you need, but I know that this is not it, that's oftentimes them being genuine, because I don't know if your department's anything like mine, we haven't really hired new faculty in the past 10 years. And so whereas 10 years ago, I might have had a master's student who was interested in something and who was able to find a faculty member who had some level of expertise in that and who could really help guide them through the literature in that area. Now we have students who have interests that are beyond what all of the faculty can serve. And so I am sometimes even just a little bit ahead of a master's student in terms of trying to read the literature and trying to be able to be a good advisor for them, because whatever it is that they're interested in, it's not really my area of specialty. And so that might be the case too, right? Is that your advisor is in fact not a jerk, but they are trying their darndest to try to keep up with you. And this is just the system that we have whenever we don't, fund higher education the way that we should. All that is to say, though, that can really get you into this place of depleted energy, because you kind of feel like a mouse in a maze, and every time that you turn a corner, the cheese isn't there. That can put you in a space where you feel so threatened and so overwhelmed by the process and so drained by what it feels like is to be unhelpful or contradictory advice that you just end up not being able to write anything. The final thing, and again, these three problems are less of three separate problems and usually a step or a progression in some ways now that I talk about them, which is to say the last one is that you just end up hating the project. So you have lack of clarity. That leads to depleted energy. You just don't really know where you're going. And then after a while, it just seems like whatever your topic is, by the end of it, you hate it. You hate writing about it. You hate talking about it. You hate reading about it. Everything about it just feels like such a slog. And there is nothing about this that you ever want to look at ever again. And as academics, we kind of even know this, right? How many times has someone told you, or have you told someone whenever they were doing their thesis or dissertation, pick something that you love, because by the end of it, you're going to hate it. So you really need to love it at first. That way it kind of gives you that extra energy to get all the way through. What kind of messed up advice is this? Take something that you love and kill it. Take something that you love and wring it for everything it's worth until you just absolutely hate it. Like, what soulless, joyless advice is that, right? Like, if you are teaching people to hate the things that they write about by the time that they're done with it, then just stop teaching people to write and stop writing then, right? I cannot think of anything that is more of a travesty than thinking that it's normal to hate what you love by the end of a project. So, sorry, I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I oftentimes see this with younger writers, whether it's a book or a thesis, dissertation, whatever, especially longer projects after so many months or even years of working on this thing and not having clarity and not having the energy to do it and just really forcing yourself to just dig a little deeper every time. All of those things end up making you hate the thing that you're writing. And yeah, you're going to have writer's block, and you're going to find it's really hard to come up with ideas if every time that you sit down at your computer, you feel like a joyless, soulless robot who is being forced to write things. That is not helpful. So that being the case, let's try not to be there, right? What are some strategies then that might help us get past this writer's block? So I've got three things that I think might be helpful for you if you are working through writer's block right now. The first thing that you should do is you need to talk this out with someone. I find 9 times out of 10 a lack of clarity as being the central culprit for writer's block. And so whether that's talking out with your advisor, talking it out with a trusted colleague or someone you can bounce ideas off of. Take copious notes, and then at the end of those notes that you have taken, either show them to that person or send them to them later in an email and say, these are the things that I recollect from our meeting. Is this correct? Do I understand you correctly? And get back from them an email or confirmation that is the case. I think this is especially true if you're working with a thesis or dissertation advisor. You should have confirmation from that person in writing that you have asked them, these are the things that I am supposed to do, and they confirm those are the things that you are supposed to do. That way there's no miscommunication about what is expected of you. And if they're comfortable with it, whoever it might be, you can always ask them if you can record the conversation. I have clients and colleagues that whenever I talk to them about their research, they record it on Zoom, they have the AI take notes. The last thing that they want to do is try to remember everything that I said in an hour-long conversation about their writing. It's impossible for them to do that, and it would be unfair of me to expect that from them. So the next thing I would say is write the easiest part first. Whenever I have people who are having a tough time writing, usually they're having a tough time writing at the start of a project or the start of a section or the start of something, right? That might be one of the hardest places for them to actually start is at the beginning. We've talked about this before, right? Sometimes the start of your project is not the place where you need to start your writing. Maybe, you are really in love with the theory of your paper. Write your theory section first then. Maybe man, I am so good at writing method sections, and before we do anything else, I'm just going to outline and write the stuff that's going to go into my methods section. I'm going to write all the survey instruments that I'm going to have, all the reliability coefficients. I mean, if that's what gets you going, man, that's what gets you going. Or I'm going to talk about my coding scheme, or whatever it is, right? Start somewhere where you can get your engine from cold to hot, where you can start revving up and getting yourself into that mode of writing. Now, at the end of the day, you're going to have to write that more difficult section, but sometimes it's just easier whenever you can address those things where you feel the most competent, where you can really feel like, hey, this is where I specialize, this is where I really shine. Let me just go ahead and write that right now. So the third thing that I would say is use placeholders. What I learned from my experience with that client that I had at the beginning of this episode was that what was happening was I was telling her things. She thought to herself, I know what's going on. And then she would get to the writing days or even weeks later. And by then she had lost it. So what we ended up doing was I would have her write a small paragraph, and we're going to do that together. I want you to come in with just a couple of sentences. You're going to run those by me. We're going to workshop those back and forth until we really feel good about this intro paragraph. And then from that, we're going to sit down and we're going to make you little placeholders of, okay, in this place, you need to have a paragraph about this. And here are some things that you should write about here. And in this section, you need this. And in this part, you need this. And so that way, instead of it being this huge project, you took the problem, you broke it up into small pieces, and then you were able to find those manageable little chunks that you were able to address. So you can use those placeholders to help you go from section to section, paragraph to paragraph. If you're talking this through with your advisor, talking this through with a trusted colleague or a writing coach or anyone like that, they can help you go, okay, here's the structure that you have here. And then here's where at the end of this, we're going to kind of map out where that leads to the next thing. So that way, if you have to get up, you have to stop writing for the day, anything, you can use those little placeholders to sort of launch you into your next little bout of writing. I would also say even within the paragraph structure itself, or even within sections, you can do this as well. Whenever I write like a paragraph and I know that I'm going to need evidence or a citation for something, I might write at the end of a sentence in all capital letters and in bold, needs citational evidence here. I know that the claim that I'm making is one that is supported. And yet at the same time, if I have to stop my writing, go back, read the article that I know that it's in, and then take that and then put that into the sentence structure, by the time that I do that, I've lost the thread of the paragraph because I'm doing too many different types of cognitive tasks. I have to write or I have to read. I can't do both of those things at the same time. So just writing things through and then having those placeholders that tell you, hey, make sure that you cite something here. This is where you left off today. Next time that you sit down to write, you should write about X, Y, or Z. Having those little notes to yourself can help make sure that you're not losing the flow of your writing. So overall, taking this tack kind of addresses those three problems of writer's block that we talked about. So first off, lack of clarity. Make sure you're talking it out with someone. Really make sure that you're taking notes. And I think that if you're talking things out, that then allows you then to have placeholders, either ones that you have written to yourself or ones that you have written with your advisor or with your editor or with whoever it might be, that helps you know exactly where you are now and where you need to go. And then as you're going through that writing process, giving yourself the easy wins of writing the easiest part first. So that way it doesn't feel like you're slogging through the writing all the time. Overall, what I would say is that what's most important is that you are identifying exactly where you need to go, making sure that you're being clear with yourself and with the people that you're writing to and with, and then being in a space of celebrating every time that you are making progress. The number one thing about writer's block is that this writer's block sort of spirals into this just absolute hatred of the project, and sometimes even hatred into writing in general. And you just get to this place where even the thought of having to work through scholarly materials and write those things up for other people is just so joyless. And that's not where we need you to be. We want you to be in a place where you feel empowered to do the things that make you curious, that make you feel happy about learning new knowledge and sharing that with other people. And you should not be in a place where writing ever seems to you to just be a slog. And so celebrating every time you have a victory, whether that's celebrating a sentence that you've written or a paragraph or getting the entire thing done or getting it accepted or whatever it might be, but really just making sure that you're taking the time to recognize that you are doing the right thing and that you're on the right track. Because if you don't do that, if you're just running from one set of unclear, ambiguous instructions to the next set of unclear, ambiguous instructions, what you're going to find is after a while, you just end up not having the energy anymore to play that game of what is it that this person wants this time? And because you're not really interested or curious in that project or even in that subject anymore because it's been burned out of you, now all of a sudden you're facing down, okay, well, I'm 2 years into my program, 5 years into my program, whatever it might be. And the thought of having to do this for 10, 20, 30 more years fills me with existential dread. Folks, there is too much going on in the world right now for you to have this feeling about writing. Writing should be your place of solace. It should be a place where you get to find joy in the curiosity, in the things that you get to do, in the space that a lot of people don't get in their jobs and in their careers and in their lives. This ability for you to work through your curiosity and to find and generate knowledge using tools that have been developed that tells us that this is actual knowledge that we can rely on. And most people don't get that. And so, we really want to be in a place where we can be joyous and celebrate that. So that's going to just about wrap it up for me, folks. So I just want to say that I'm always interested in hearing about the things that you all are doing to address this week's topic of writer's burnout. Feel free, reach out to me, let me know. What are the tips, tricks, habits, rituals, things that you're doing in order to navigate, manage, or overcome your own writer's block? I'm always looking for advice that I can give to my students or to my clients. And I'm also happy to give you a shout out the next time I talk about this topic on my podcast. Finally, if you're interested in connecting with me as a writing coach, I'm always happy to take on new clients. I can work with you on your thesis, dissertation, journal articles, grant applications, whatever it is that you're interested in. I want to be a resource for you to make sure that you're getting your work out there and that your voice is getting heard about the things that you're passionate about. So feel free to reach out. My information is in the podcast description. We can set up a time for consultation. We can see if there's an opportunity for us to develop a relationship across weeks or even months to make sure that you're achieving your goals in your research. So thank you again, and I'll see you in next week's episode. Hey writers, what's stopping your best ideas from becoming your next big publication? Brilliant ideas shouldn't die in your drafts folder. Now's the time to bridge the gap between the possible and the published. If you have the time, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the podcast, leave a positive review, assign this to your classes, or share it with a colleague. All those things help get the word out and let me know what I can do to make this podcast the best resource for you. Also, if you'd like to set up a time to chat with me about your next big idea, then you can find my information in the podcast description where you can schedule a time. So until then, keep healthy, keep writing, and don't let reviewer 2 get you down.